What is happening, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the 182 News Podcast. This is your host, Poppin' Curbs, and I appreciate you tuning in to another episode. Last month, we had the top 5 Matt Skiba Blink-182 songs. I got a lot of good feedback on that. People just love countdowns. Every time I do a countdown, the numbers just shoot up. I'm just going to start counting down random shit. Today, I want to discuss a little bit further the Blink-182 Buddha tape mystery. So for those of you who pay attention to the YouTube page, a couple weeks ago, I released a new video titled The Blink-182 Buddha Tape Mystery. And in that, I go through really a lot of my research and where I'm at on this old school Blink-182 cassette. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's probably the most coveted Blink-182 collectible that you can realistically get your hands on. It's the old school Buddha cassette. They were still called Blink. This came out in January 1994. They recorded it at Double Time Studios with Jeff Forrest. Fun fact, they actually recorded Short Bus with him as well. And after the initial Cheshire Cat sessions, they went back to him and did a second round of recording to tune up that album with him as well. So I thought about actually just ripping the audio from that video and popping it into a podcast. However, there's actually been some new things we've learned since I posted that video 2 weeks ago. It's crazy. So I've been researching this tape for several years at this point. It's fascinating to me. There are multiple versions that have popped up throughout time. At this point, it very rarely pops up. I mean, I have not seen one of these pop up in the wild in probably 6 or 7 years at this point. Obviously, I collect a lot of Blink stuff. There's some other hardcore collectors out there who have been searching for one of these for a long time. Really, it is the holy grail of Blink collectibles. And several years ago, when I was starting to really begin to look into obtaining one of these, I was trying to figure out which ones are real. There's several different variations that were popping up, and it's like, okay, at that point in time, they were probably $400 or $500. Nowadays, I bet you're going to pay over $700, to be honest, to get one of these. And here I was thinking, you know, if I'm going to drop this kind of money, I want to make sure this thing is real. And when I started asking questions and digging into this, what I found was nobody knew the answer. And so that's where I kind of embarked on my journey to really set the record straight on what's going on with this, which ones are real, which ones are worth buying, are there known fakes, when did they come out, what the fuck is happening with this old school Blink item that everybody wants but nobody knows anything about. So today, what I'm going to do is really kind of expand on that YouTube video I posted a couple weeks ago. And if you want the visual component, go back and watch the YouTube video maybe after this. I don't know, maybe this will spark your interest into going back and actually seeing what I'm talking about. And if not, you know, I'm hoping that maybe this will be an interesting conversation, a little piece of Blink history for the podcast. So as I mentioned, Blink recorded this basically very end of 1993, getting into 1994. We don't know the exact date on this. I've actually reached out to Jeff Forrest. He was supposed to come on the pod a long time ago, and it just never happened. I'm circling back around on that to see if I can make it happen because there are questions surrounding this. So to back up in time just a little bit, as we know, Blink forms late 1992. In 1993, they start, you know, putting together some songs. Really, the first tape or physical release of theirs that was distributed is called Fly Swatter. A lot of folks know that. You can catch that on YouTube. There are clips of it. It's out there. This is one that, you know, realistically, you can't get your hands on it. And you have to be extremely careful if you're buying and paying a ton of money for these things because they can easily be faked. And we have seen fakes of Fly Swatter throughout the years. So be extremely careful if you see one of those pop up and you're tempted to jump on it. I always tell people with collectibles, if it seems too good to be true, it usually is. So Fly Swatter was recorded. That was recorded in Scott's bedroom. It was kind of their initial demo tape. Mark handmade the J card. These were hand dubbed. So the cassettes themselves are just blank. It's something that you would just go buy at Office Depot and record your band to and start handing it out to get the word out. So realistically, I would never trust a fly swatter tape out in the wild unless I knew it came from the band or one of the band's friends or family members from that time period. And honestly, at this point in time, that thing should cost probably over $1,000 for sure. I mean, I could see a handful of collectors dropping some serious dough on that. So if you see one of those pop up for $150 or $300, there is an extremely good chance it's fake. And Mark himself has said that you really can't authenticate those because the J card was literally hand copied at Kinko's and the cassette was hand dubbed. So literally anybody, any forger can recreate that and it'll kind of mimic what was happening at that time. So Fly Swatter came out. They then had what we call Demo 2 forever. Now we actually recently just figured out that demo was called 21 Days, which was a revolutionary piece of research that was cracked by Mark Hoppus. So they had Fly Swatter, Demo 2. Now, the third one is what became known as the Buddha tape, and that's the one that I'm talking about here. So this is late 93. We know it's out January 1994. They recorded this at Double Time Studios with Jeff Forrest, and this is really the first one that you could buy. This was at shows. You could write them and get a copy of this. Story goes, Mark would drop off a handful of these all around town. They would circle back around, pray that 5 of them had sold. And if they did, he would drop off some more tapes. If you have read Tales from Beneath Your Mom, which is Anne's book, Mark's sister, came out in 2001-ish. It's a great read. And really, it's more of a picture book. It's an easy read. And as far as Blink history goes, and especially some of the old school photos and information we have, a lot of it is thanks to that book. So pick that up and read through it if you haven't. And if you have, one of the pictures that I just love that's in it is a young Mark Hoppus sitting on his living room floor at his parents', and he is putting together these Buddha cassettes. And he's got an old school Blink shirt on. And it's just so cool, and I just love that picture. I actually posted it, I think on Mark's birthday on the podcast Instagram page. And it just shows you early on how much of a group and family effort it was to get Blink going. And this is something that I don't think people realize how much work goes into promoting a band from the ground up and getting your name out there and what you had to do. I mean, this is Mark and his family sitting around, putting these together by hand, dropping them off at random stores, praying you sell 3 of them, circling back around, dropping off 3 more. I mean, it's just crazy what all goes into it. So if you see that picture, go to the pod page and you can see it, or it's also in the book. You will see Mark putting together this original Buddha tape. This would be 1994-ish, probably January 1994 is when this photo was taken. Okay. Now, you'll notice in those photos, there's a stash on the floor. There's a little pile of them. And you will notice that they are black with white text. Okay, you can kind of see it. And then you can see right in front of Mark in a box, there's a little letter and there's the J cards laying out. And we'll get into this a little bit. But what's interesting is, to me, throughout the years, I started seeing different colors and different J card variations. And the J card is the insert inside of a cassette tape. And again, if you're looking at obtaining one of these, and this is something that from a collectible aspect, and particularly with me, I've always been interested in autographs. You guys know this. I just did a top 10 Blink-182 autograph countdown on the pod Instagram and Twitter pages. Well, stuff you got to be careful on this is forgeries and fakes. And this actually gets into art collectors and really any type of collectible that has value. Unfortunately, assholes will forge them to make money out of nothing. So as I started looking into picking one of these up and documenting them and trying to get an idea of where they came from and thinking, why is this different? Why is this one fucking blue and this one has a sticker on it? And so right away, you have to be a little skeptical when you see these different variations pop up. And what I have been trying to figure out for years at this point is what is real and what is fake. So based on that photo and based on what a lot of folks said at that time and even on collector pages and on Discogs is the only real version of this cassette is the black with the white text. Okay? It's just a standard looking cassette tape, black, white text. However, throughout the years, there's been some decent sources and some folks pop up with ones that their stories have checked out, and it's like, okay, this one looks a little different, maybe it's real, they got a good backstory, there's no reason for some of these people to lie. And ultimately, we ended up with 4 different versions of this tape that I've seen pop up throughout time, okay? The first, as mentioned, is black with white text. That one, you know, we can pretty much agree is the OG. There's a picture of Mark putting it together on his living room floor. It's in the book. I mean, we know that is the original. A second version popped up that was black with blue text. So it looks exactly like the first one. However, the text is like a bright blue. Really weird. A third one popped up that is red with white text. And it's like, what the hell? What, you know, what's going on here? Then a fourth one, this is the fourth and final one that we've seen, that we've documented, and really when I say we, it's a lot of this is myself and Davy Jones throughout the years. There've been collectors and collector pages throughout the years that have, you know, had these in their collection and have shown them off. But really, I've been diving into this pretty hardcore for several years now at this point. And Davy Jones, longtime Blink fan, you all know him. He's really been my research partner throughout a lot of this. And we have some nerdy fucking conversations about this stuff, digging into, I mean, literally the fonts on the side of a tape from 1994. I mean, it's crazy what we're putting into this to try and figure out this fucking mystery. And that's why I've dubbed it the Blink-182 Buddha tape mystery, because as we're about to see, it gets pretty crazy. So those are the 4 different variations of the actual physical cassette that we were seeing, okay? Black with white text, black with blue text, red with white text, and then the fourth, a white sticker variation, which is drastically different. The ink on the side of the cassette, it isn't even like, you know, printed onto the cassette. It's literally a sticker that somebody printed off and slapped on this cassette. So right away, when I was starting to get offered that one, and I had collectors who had that one who were reaching out to me, I'm like, this looks fake as fuck, okay? But maybe it's real. We don't know. Now, to take things a step further, traditionally, there is an insert that should come with these, okay? It's literally a folded up insert, and in that picture of Mark, you can see they are laying in a box, and he's getting ready to hand fold those and place it in the cassette case. Now, again, throughout the years, we've seen 2 different versions of this. It should be lavender. So if you have an authentic first-gen copy of this, it should be a lavender tint. Now, throughout the years, I started seeing some of these that would just have a white copy, or what's clearly, I mean, you can see an outline of the original along the side where it's literally a copy of the original. You can see it clear as day. So that's another thing that you have to take into account. Okay, maybe you get offered an authentic cassette, but it has a white photocopied insert. And to me as a collector, that alters really the value because it's not fully original. There is a component of this that is recreated or fake. So those are 2 things to take into account. And what's tough about these is, again, this was all DIY. This is Mark literally going to Kinko's, laying a template down, hand copying it, and then folding them up himself. So, you know, it's really tough to authenticate some of this stuff when it was truly DIY, done by hand, you know, copied. It's really tough. So you can see already at this point, not only do we have 2 different inserts that seem to pop up, we have 4 different cassette tapes themselves that seem to pop up. And then to make matters worse, as I started documenting these, and I have a folder where I keep track of every single one I have ever fucking seen for probably 7 or 8 years at this point. And I researched this stuff. I've Googled it. I've dug far and deep. I've talked to collectors. I've had folks send me stuff, and I document every single one of these. And I'll be honest, I bet I have less than 30 of these on file. And we'll get into the numbers a little bit later, because that's something that, based on my research, is drastically different than the information that was out there. So as I started documenting these and putting them in little specific folders, red Buddha folder, white sticker Buddha folder, black OG folder, this is how much of a fucking nerd I am, I started noticing there are different J-card variations. Okay? Again, this is the insert that comes with it. If you're looking at this, you'll see the front cover. It has that silver Buddha statue, which, fun fact, Mark still has that. He actually busted it out on a stream recently. It says Blink at the top. It's got a little flower. On the left, there is a pink flap. And on the right, there is a photo of Blink. Okay? And if you're just looking at the front of this, you may not notice anything. However, if you see the full J card laid out, you will see there are 3 different variations that have popped up that are clear as day. Now, on the first one, and this is the one that, if you look really closely in that picture of Mark, you can see this is the one that is laying in front of him at that time. And what that is, it is a picture of him, Tom, Scott, outside, up against a fence, and it's in color, full color. Story goes, Cam Jones went out with them, took these photos, okay? Tom's wearing an old school, the first Blink shirt, the Wiener Man shirt. It's got the old school Blink logo on the front. Scott's wearing that black jacket or button up, and it is a color photo. That is version 1 of that J card. And that's fine. You may think, okay, everything's great. I mean, that's the one, that's the real one. But all of a sudden I started noticing a second one pop up, and it's the exact same as that. However, the photo is not fully in color. The photo is actually a purple tint. Just the photo. And as I started looking at that, knowing that these are hand copied, these are handmade, I'm thinking, why was that tweaked? And why was just that particular flap tweaked? It makes no sense to me. Now, one thing I've noticed throughout time researching these is I started putting 2 and 2 together. For those of you who are Blink collectors or know a little bit about Blink vinyl, you will know that really one of the most valuable Blink vinyl and rarest Blink vinyl you can get is called the Short Bus vinyl. It came out in summer 1994. It is a 7-inch. I've posted this several times on the podcast page. It's one of my favorite pieces in my collection. And it has a similar purple tint cover. And not only that, as I started staring at it, I noticed, you know what, that's the same photo shoot. I'll be damned. So if you go look at Short Bus, and if you look at that flap on the side of that J card, you'll actually notice that it's from the same exact photo shoot. The dudes are wearing the same thing, and they're a similar purple tint. So in my head, as I'm starting to think about, okay, they were kind of hand making these, they were picking them up in batches. You know, why the fuck would they change just this flap to purple? Is it even real? We didn't know, okay, at that time. My theory is that the first one I just mentioned, the full color photo, my theory is that that was the first one. That's the OG. It's right there sitting in front of Mark, you know, in Anne's book. My thought was this purple one, maybe it came out the same time as Short Bus, which we know was summer 1994. And maybe since they were running off the purple cover for Short Bus, they thought maybe we'll just tweak this one photo. I don't know. It's interesting. Now, the third J-card variation that we started seeing pop up has a blurry Carrie Key photo. So Carrie Key, longtime friend of the band, responsible for some of the earliest shots of Blink, took this photo, and based on Carrie's Flickr page, it's from Soma, 93 or 94, he says. So right there are 3 different J-card variations right off the bat, 3 different photos. it blows my mind. So I'm thinking, okay, which ones of these are real? Are any of them real, other than the first? Now, to make matters worse, I noticed a fourth pop up, okay? So with this white sticker variation, I started noticing that there was a pattern on these, and that pattern is that blink at the top is cut off. If you see a picture of this, and again, I hope a lot of you go and check this out on the YouTube page because it helps immensely to have a visual component with this for reference. If you look at them, you will see that blink is literally cut off. You can see the top of it. The dot on the eye is just cut in half, basically. So that's arguably a fourth variation, okay? And what's weird to me is as I've started documenting these and putting them together and just putting my eyes on them, picking out different things to look at, I notice that it is only the white sticker version that has this cutoff blink. So to me, as a fucking nerd detective on this, that tells me they're from the same source. However, we don't know what the source is. Is the source blink? Is the source Filter Records, which we'll talk about here in a minute? Or is the source Jimbo in his basement printing these off and thinking he's a fucking genius, making $60 a pop? We'll see. And something that I noticed just a couple weeks ago as I was putting together the YouTube video, and this was never documented, never pointed out, never seen it brought up, I started looking at these J-card variations, and on the pink flap, which is where the track listing is, there are fucking variations among that. So there are versions that have Filter Records kind of stretched out, and above it, there is a very faint hand-dotted line. Davey and I zoomed in on this. We can tell it's hand-dotted. And all of a sudden, as I'm looking at this, I saw one where the Filter Records font is totally different. And it doesn't have a hand-dotted line. It has a solid horizontal line. And I'm thinking, somebody had to tweak that. Somebody physically tweaked that, went and printed them off. Why? Somebody has to know this answer, okay? Another interesting thing that I started noticing on some of these is along that same pink flap, you will notice an extremely consistent white edge on the bottom of some of them. And if you have one of these, I encourage you to pull them out and start digging into which version you have. And you'll see some of these white edge versions, they all have the exact same white edge. It literally runs almost the full length of it. And it's incredibly consistent. So to me, that is a stack of 100 of these or so that were probably printed out, taken in front of the paper cutter, splap, all cut at once, same source, same run. Okay, there's no variations among that, which is remarkable. Now, as I started digging into these even further, and this is where I understand where they say, what is it? Like it's 10,000 hours or however many hours it is to become an expert at something. It's because you really just have to put in your time on some of this stuff. And that's where it's tough when people are, especially with autographs, people will be like, well, how do you know that's real? You weren't standing there when they signed it. It's like, well, I get that. But I've also stared at a shit ton of these for a long time. And there are just certain traits you pick up on when you stare at this stuff all the time. Where do they typically like to sign? How big is Matt's autograph typically? Just little things like that you pick up on when you've put your time into the research and just staring at this stuff. And as I was looking at these tapes for the video, I picked up on something else, okay, that's fucking crazy. I had two of them side by side, and I'm staring at them, and I'm just picking out little components to focus on. It's kind of what you have to do when you're cross-referencing this shit. And when you're really just trying to solve this mystery, looking for alterations and looking for differences. I was staring at them, and Buddha's hands on one version are basically in blink on the baseline at the bottom. And on another one, I'm noticing there is a substantial gap between the hands and blink. And as I started looking at them, and I drew a little line and I put a little ruler and I sent it to Davey to make sure my eyes weren't just playing tricks on me. It's like, holy fuck, this was right in front of us this entire time. There are two different variations of the front. There is one where Buddha is underneath blink, and there's another one where Buddha is in blink. And another thing I picked up on the front is in one of those versions, the little flower in the bottom right, there are 3 white dots that look like little flower seeds to me. And another one, there are 4. Okay? Again, sometimes I wonder if there's like a Smash Mouth community, a Chumbawamba community, who are as pathetic as myself, digging through, counting hand gaps on a fucking demo tape from 1994. However, I love this stuff. And I know at least a handful of you are kind of paying attention to this. And it's just fascinating to me to think back in 1994. Someone is doing this. Why? Okay? Now, as I started, tying these theories together and running through of what was happening in my mind, I can tell that 3 of these were done with the Buddha with the hand gap, okay? I'm starting to refer to these as hand gap and no hand gap. The first 3, dotted line, filter records is a little bit stretched out. They were all done where there is a hand gap between Buddha, and if you go look at the YouTube video or if you Google this, it's right underneath the N and the K in blink. That's where you can really see it. 3 of those, so we're talking the color Cam Jones photo up against the fence, the purple Cam Jones photo up against the fence, and then the Carrie Key blurry photo. Those were done with the hand gap. And what was happening on these is Mark would take this in and literally lay these stencils down for the cover on a copier and run the copy. Now what happened is somebody, when they went back to run this second variation, which has the solid horizontal line and a totally different filter records, and actually the track listings look a little bit more bold. Whenever they lined that up for this second run, the actual Buddha statue was a little bit closer to blink. And it sounds like blink itself was a stencil that Mark probably laid on there, and that's why there are differences there. Okay? So really, we have like 5 fucking variations of the front, which is crazy. And so, it's hard enough for anybody to get their hands on one of these days. And now we're just cracking open the case here. There are 5 of these you got to get your hands on if you want to have a full collection, which is absurd. So I've identified these. I'm trying to get this information out here. And part of what I love about this stuff and why I do this stuff is if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I want to make sure that this information is out there. And if some kid stumbles upon Blink-182 in 30 years and he really wants to start collecting them and he loves the history and he loves the lore and everything behind it, I want that kid to be able to look at my YouTube video and at least be guided a little bit in the right direction of what's real and what's not. Okay, that's why I love this stuff. So as I started looking at these, it's clear that there are different variations, right? Obviously. So then the question is, well, when did these come out? When did they start with the first and then they moved on to the purple and then they moved on to the, what's the timeline on these? This is very important when you're talking about the holy fucking grail of Blink-182 collectibles. It's kind of important to know when it came out and if this is truly an original or if this is a copy. Again, value-wise, that changes stuff drastically. Okay? So, to back up a little bit, and this gets more into kind of the history of Buddha. So, Mark worked with a guy named Pat, and Pat Secker was putting together kind of a small indie record label, all right? It was Filter Records. That is what this cassette kind of came out on, okay? So we know that these came out 1994. You could get them in the mail. They had them at shows. I mean, we have people who have gotten them at shows. We know they were $5, okay? We know the band was done selling them at shows by early 1995, okay? So rolling into Cheshire Cat. Cheshire Cat comes out February 1995. They're done selling these at shows. Davey went to a ton of these shows. They didn't have them then, okay? We know they were done selling them by then, right? So from the band directly at merch booths and realistically being dropped off at stores, we're talking 1994, okay? Now, we know for a fact that these were still available by mail as late as 1997, okay? I have seen letters, I've had people tell me, and I've seen stories and have done research on this where folks were writing Mark or writing Blink right in the P.O. box, and they were getting these back as late as 1997. We also know that Filter, so this was Pat, maybe a small group of his friends on his side, people were finding ways to write them, and they were still selling them for $5 as late as 1997 as well. So we know these were available basically from 1994 until 1997, okay? Story goes, Mark would drive these all around town. You could get them by mail. You could get them at shows. We also know that, once Kung Fu got the Buddha rights, and as you know, they went on to kind of make the remastered CD and vinyl. And actually, I mean, there was just presses and a new cassette and a new CD digipack version of that just dropped a couple months ago. Actually, yesterday, I could not stop listening to Buddha. I painted an entire room, and I listened to Buddha on repeat. That's how my brain is so entrapped within this mystery right now. So when Kung Fu took over, we know that basically Filter had to stop selling these, okay? Now, the story goes, from Filter's side of things, they weren't publicly promoting these. They didn't have a website selling these. From their standpoint, supposedly they had some leftovers, and when Blink fans tracked them down, they hooked them up. We know for a fact in 1997, an original copy you could still get, black and white text, for $5. Okay, so it's not like they were selling these for $50 on their own website. They were supposedly selling some leftovers. However, once Kung Fu got the rights, they did have to stop, okay? So there's that small little window of when these were available, okay? So recently, Mark on Discord has gotten a nice stash of Blink OG items from his mom, from storage. And it's really been revolutionary to my quest on really trying to figure out what is real and what's not, and kind of get some answers on this stuff. So Mark found an original Buddha cassette, black and white tape. So we can pinpoint that one as 1994. Again, this is in the photo in Ann's book of Mark putting them together. We know black and white text is early 1994. The blue one popped up several times, but I haven't seen too many of these. I've probably seen, honestly, less than 10 blue ones. Story goes from multiple sources. They got this in 1994 from Mark at Soma. So at that point, pretty confident that the black and white as well as the black and blue were available in 1994. The third version, is the red and white. Okay, this is the one that I've seen the least of. I think I've seen like 3 or 4 of these, to be honest. We had a pretty good source, story checked out, no reason to lie. Again, you have to be careful when you get these stories from folks, because typically when these stories come up is when people are selling things. And what I have found, it's sad, this should be a case study on human nature. But I have found throughout the years that people will fucking lie like hell when they're trying to pawn something off or sell something. I mean, I have seen obvious forgeries throughout the years, and the sellers will just blatantly lie. This was signed in December 2019. I saw Mark outside of Starbucks, ran over there, had a pen and paper, 7 vinyls, and he signed all of them. People just fucking lie. Like, it's crazy to me. And knowing it, I'm looking at them like, you are fucking lying. Like, so bad. And they'll double down. You know, sometimes I'll just message these people just to fuck with them. Like, oh, when'd you get that? You know, when exactly was that? And they'll just double down on their fucking lie. It's crazy to me. So again, you have to take some of these stories with a grain of salt. However, there are ways to kind of fact check these people, and some of these have checked out. And at this point in time, we're at least going to loosely believe them because we don't have anything better to go off of right now, to be honest. So the red one, we have dated as 1994, okay? August 1994 from Mark is where one of these red ones, 99% sure, came up. So those 3, we're pretty confident came out in that first year, okay? Which makes sense. Honestly, once the band was moved on to Cheshire Cat, I mean, that was a big deal, okay? CDs, on cargo, I mean, tapes. I don't see them looking back and just continuing to manually go make 5 copies of a Buddha tape. You know, at that point, they had cargo making CDs and we're moving forward. So those 3 really make sense to me. Now the 4th does not, okay? And this is the white sticker variation. I actually have one of these. And this is one that myself and Davey, we've always been skeptical of it, because if you look at it, it looks fake. I mean, the others are printed on, this one's a sticker. It looks like something that somebody could very easily DIY, you know, with a label maker and run off some hand copies and be on their way. Now, I bought one of these knowing that. And again, this is where it's tough, because throughout the years, a handful of folks, and even if you go look on Discogs, there's somebody in the comments who swears up and down they got this one in 1996 from Filter Records. Okay? Through the mail from Filter Records. Now, we know Filter was selling some of these through the mail. And in fact, there's a little bit of controversy there, to be quite honest. And what doesn't make sense to me about these is, A, we know for a fact, I know someone who got one of these in 1997 from Filter Records for $5, and they also had a t-shirt and some stickers thrown in. So to me, that tells me it's not like Filter was trying to run a profit here. I mean, $5 for all that stuff. And they weren't advertising it. You had to find their email and kind of beg as an OG Blink fan for one. So what doesn't make sense to me is in 1997, we know for a fact someone got a black one with white text, OG, okay? So some of these people popping up saying they got a white sticker label in 1996, it just doesn't make any sense to me, okay? I could see if they switched to a white label maybe after they were out of them, but where my head goes is that worth the effort to go rerun one of these and print off the label, all of that for like probably $2 profit? It just doesn't add up to me. So it's really, really weird. So at this point, I'm really taking this 1996 directly from Filter for the white sticker version, I'm taking that with a grain of salt for sure. Now, one thing that I do trust 100% is my own autograph dating, okay? Now, as I have documented some of these, I've noticed some of these are signed. And what's interesting to me is Mark nor Tom have, it's not like throughout the years somebody brought them one of these and they were like, oh, that's fake, I'm not signing that. They probably can't tell right off the bat. So I've seen several of these white tape variations that are signed. And again, you can tell clear as day it's the white tape variation. Basically, when you look at the front and Blink is cut off at the top, you can tell it's a white sticker tape variation. So as I started documenting these, and I'm noticing these are signed, well, for those of you who know what I deal with primarily, it's Blink autographs, okay? I have documented Blink's autographs for a decade. Part of why is because I wanted to see how their signatures evolved over time so that I can date some of this stuff. And to me, that's what's really cool about an autograph, and this is a case in point. It's a little timestamp. So when somebody signs something, boom, little piece of history, little point in time that is forever right there. And that's what's really fucking cool about autographs to me. And that's why I collect them. And that's why I cherish them. And they mean a lot to me, because to me, they're little pieces of history and they help tell little stories. As weird as that is. And when I first started getting into Blink autographs, I'd collected and documented and helped with signature authentication and helped run autograph signings and all this stuff for years and years and years for baseball, okay? I'm a hardcore baseball autograph collector. It's actually, my Blink collection, to be quite honest, is pretty ridiculous. I mean, I'm pretty confident I have the #1 Blink autograph collection on the planet. I would be absolutely shocked if anybody had one better, and I'd love to see it. And as ridiculous as that is, my baseball collection is really kind of ridiculous as well. And when I first started collecting Blink, this is probably around 2010-ish, when I really started kind of, to be honest, having some sort of disposable income, not being totally broke in college or wherever. And I finally started looking into, okay, this is my favorite band, and I've always collected shit forever. I collect signed baseballs and comic books, and, just in my Instagram story the other day, I just found my fucking Beanie Baby collection, which is just hilarious. But just throughout time, I have always collected stuff, and I get on a kick with something and I get obsessed with it, and I want them all. And it only made sense, as much as I loved Blink, to collect Blink stuff. And I started digging into the history, and I loved the lore and everything behind it. And when I started looking into Blink autographs, because it made sense, I love baseball autographs and had been going down that road for some time, there was no information out there about it. So when I was looking up stuff, I'm like, I don't even know what's real, what's fake. I have a couple of my own examples to go by, or what they were selling on the website or whatever, but I have no clue when this was signed. So long story short, where I'm going with that is I've put together a timeline of their signatures throughout time, and you can see how they evolved throughout history. Their signatures changed and evolved immensely throughout time. And by that, you can date items. And it's really cool. I can look at a sample of Mark's autographs and handwritings, and I'm like, oh, that's 1994. Or I'll see one, oh, that's 2002. He had just changed his autograph. So based on that, I trust my gut on those for sure. And I have seen some of these white sticker tapes signed going back to about 1999-ish. So while I'm not totally confident in dating these as 1996 through the mail from Filter Records, I am confident in dating these as far back as 1999-ish, which means, it's 23 years old. So these are old. It's not like these just popped up last year or 10 years ago after the reunion or something like that. These have been around for a while. Now, when you say 1999, the band blew up in 1999. So really, my theory on the white sticker tape is either A, maybe Filter handmade some of these, or B, some forger, which to me, it's the same source because that white edge is consistent, the blink is cut off, they came from the same source, or a forger in 1999 spun off, I don't know, maybe 50 of these and decided to make some money with it. Right when the band blew up, take advantage of their rise. Okay, that's really where I'm heading on those. That's where Davey, we agree on this. That seems feasible, okay? So obviously, as I'm doing this research and trying to get this shit figured out, it's like, okay, who better to ask than Mark and the band? So a couple years ago, I asked Mark on Twitter. I asked about these variations. And I said, do you happen to recall which ones of these were real? And he replied at the time, he said, we pressed them in batches when we could afford to and changed the ink and cassette color a bunch. Okay? Now that was absolutely huge because at that point in time, we knew the black and white version was the OG. We knew that was authentic, again, based on the photo in Ann's book. On Discogs, it said only the black and white version is authentic. There were several collector pages out there. Only the black and white version is authentic. Even Davey at the time, who has a black and white one, only the black and white version is authentic. However, Mark specifically recalls we pressed them in batches and changed the ink and cassette color a bunch. That's revolutionary, okay? Right there, that quote right there made us think, oh my gosh, some of these might be real. The ink color, the cassette color, he specifically recalls that. So I didn't stop there. I started bugging everybody I could and reaching out, trying to get some answers on this. And some of the significant progress I made was I asked both Carrie DeLong and Tom. Neither one of them could recall. Okay. I asked Dylan Anderson, who's been on the pod, longtime friend of the band, and he said he only recalls the black and white version. Carrie Key does not recall any white tape version. So if you just go off of that, then that kind of leads into what Mark was saying is, yeah, maybe the ink was changed, cassette color was changed a little bit. Asked Cam Jones. He said, the first run were all black. I do not recall additional runs. He was shown all 4 variants. He said the only authentic release is the black with white lettering. So the OG. So there we really have basically everybody close to the band at that time. I mean, really, Ann Hoppus and Scott are about the only 2 people we could ask to get anything else about that time. And we kind of have conflicting information off of that. And so this is where my head's just, it's like that little mind blown meme of the Step Brothers dude. It's just, my mind is just blown on this. It's a mystery. We still don't know. Okay. And then not only that, there are questions surrounding how many of these were even made. This is important information when you're talking high value collectibles. For years, and I still think to this day, unless somebody has updated it based on my information and on my video, if you go look at Discogs and what collectors seem to think for some reason, there were 1,000 of the initial run is what was on Discogs forever. That's what a lot of folks seem to think. And I honestly don't even know where that number originally came from. Now, as I started documenting these and really paying attention to how many were coming up and how often they were coming up, again, I haven't seen an OG one of these up for sale anywhere. We're talking eBay, Marketplace, collectors groups, wherever. I have not seen an OG pop up in probably 7 years. I have not seen a blue or red publicly in about that same time period. The only one that kind of seems to pop up occasionally if you offer a ton of money is this white sticker. That's the one that I got offered, picked it up, knowing that it is very likely fake. And so as I'm looking at these, I'm thinking, there is no fucking way there are 1,000 of these that were made. And so I've asked Mark about it. We've talked about this multiple times. He said there's no way we made 1,000 of these. We couldn't afford to at the time, which makes perfect sense. And actually, it ties back into his quote and his recollection that we just talked about, where he said, we pressed them in batches when we could afford to. And if you think about that process, well, that's where it kind of makes sense that these could change. If you go run to the cassette pressing plant or wherever, I don't even know who does these things or who did, the store, you're probably buying whatever tapes they have on the rack right there or whatever the best deal on a pack of 25 you can get. So it makes sense. So when trying to figure out the numbers on these, I started referencing in my brain short bus. So short bus is that 7-inch vinyl, super rare. These days it's going for like 500 plus. We know there were 500 of those made, right? And honestly, it pops up probably 3 or 4 times a year. I mean, one sold on eBay literally 2 weeks ago. So as rare as it is, if you're willing to fork up the change, you can usually find one. You can usually find somebody who will let one go for the right price. And there's 500 of those. So by basic deduction, my brain's thinking, okay, short bus, there are 500 of those, and you can get it 3 or 4 times a year, for sure. Yeah, it's kind of hard, but, it pops up publicly. This isn't just, collector DMs or some black market of old school Blink items. This is like fucking eBay. And if that's the case with that, why doesn't Buddha ever pop up? If there are 1,000 of these, why doesn't it ever pop up? There's no way. It makes no sense. And so Mark and I have discussed that, and we both came to the conclusion that we think realistically there are maybe 300 of these at most, based on that. Now, I get it. One side of this is, but it's the holy grail of Blink collectibles. People don't want to let it go. I get that. But at the same time, I've been begging for information on this for years at this point, and I don't have hardly anybody coming forward and even telling me they have one, nor sharing information from my research or photos, anything like that. I have offered a shit ton of money for any variation of these. Crickets. Nobody comes forward. So I understand, maybe people are hanging on to it. But for the most part, Blink collectors, especially who are this in depth with OG items, they're pretty cool about sharing information, and they know what I try to do for collectors. And I think a lot of folks, if they had one, would be more than happy to shoot me photos and chat for my research. And I don't get any. Now, of course, a lot of these were probably broken, some lost to the sands of time. I bet there's a couple sitting in a Goodwill in San Diego. I mean, it's fascinating to me when you think about, maybe how many of these are just sitting in somebody's attic or closet or a tub, and they just have no clue. They've forgotten about it, and it would mean so much to so many of us. So, taking that stuff into account, I still don't think there are very many of these. I mean, honestly, if there were 300 made at that time, I bet there are less than 100 that are physically still intact and in the hands of people who know what they have, to be honest. And that may be high. So we know this is super rare. We know there are multiple variations. I've been trying to figure out exact timelines on this. any information, if you have one of these, if you have information on one of these, hit me up in my DMs, because again, I'm trying to document this stuff and make sure everybody has the correct info. And I've joked that this deserves a Netflix special, the Blink-182 Buddha tape mystery. And, it begs the question, which ones are real? At the end of the day, even if you don't give a fuck about all this, which ones are real? So let's go through these. Because honestly, some of this stuff has changed since I posted that video 2 weeks ago. And I'm just blown away by how much information I personally have learned or picked up on, and Mark has been kind enough to share. And I'm blown away by really the progress that I've made on this in the past couple weeks. So as far as cassettes go, black with white text, real, okay? No question, we know that. It's the OG. Black with blue text. So based on what we had seen and conversations that Davey and myself have had, we were under the assumption that this was likely authentic. And reason being is when we've seen these pop up, the J card looks correct. We've seen some with lavender inserts. And, first and foremost, the text on the cassette, the fonts match perfectly. They're exact. And for that reason, that is what really has sold us, like, this is likely authentic. It must be a different batch. And when you combine that into what Mark had said in that comment, where he specifically recalled changing the ink in the cassette colors, for the past couple years, this has been likely authentic in our opinion. Now, since then, and since the video I posted 2 weeks ago, Mark literally just found one of these in his stash, okay? Boom. It's authentic. We now know, this is breaking news. I need my little Travis drum roll that I'm never going to get. My little sound effects. Breaking news. We know 100% the black with the blue text is authentic. 100%. Cannot get a better source than Mark himself. Moving on to the third one, red with white text. Okay, this is one that is still pending. However, due to the reasons just mentioned on the blue one, Davey and I, at this point in time, we think this is likely authentic. The fonts match up. Everything seems to check out. There are not many of these. I mean, this literally could have been a set of 10 that the cassette place had at that time, and that's all there is in red. But at this point in time, red with white text, we believe is likely authentic. Let's move on to the fourth, the white sticker variation. So this is the one that we really just have a lot of question marks on, and have since the very beginning, because when you look at it, like I said, it hits you right away. This is different. So here's what I don't understand. If you are making a fake, a forgery, typically those are meant to mimic something exactly, to fool someone. In the autograph world, if you forge something, or if somebody is forging autographs, you kind of want to make it look somewhat close. The whole point is to rip people off like an asshole. And what I don't quite get is, if someone was faking these, why would they make it so drastically different? It looks completely different. So here's where I am on the white sticker tape, okay? It's either A, came from filter through the mail, and if that's the case, we may not ever know. Or B, the same forger around 1999 put together a handful of these. I'd probably guess no more than 40, 50 at the most. I mean, I think I've probably documented 10, 15 of these. The same forger, because the J cards all match, literally same cuts, everything's the same. So I know they're from the same source. I just don't know that source. I don't think it was the band at this point. Now, this could change if Mark magically finds one of these in his tubs tomorrow. But at this point in time, I personally, I think it is likely that these were forged. Somebody ran these off in 1999 when the band blew up and took advantage of that hype. However, I'm kind of skeptical of that because that's a lot of fucking work. And honestly, at that time, these weren't selling for a ton. At that time, late 90s, these were probably $60, $70. So is that really worth the effort to rip those to cassettes, to hand type these labels, go get the labels, print them off, slap them on there, copy the J card, fuck it up. I mean, the blink is cut off at the top. All of that, I just don't know if that would be worth it at the time. Like in my head, I would think you would be better off forging Enema of the State autographs or Enema of the State demo tapes or something, It just doesn't add up to me. But it also doesn't add up to me that these were apparently, allegedly, coming directly from Filter in 1996 when we know in 1997 they had the black and white version still. So there's still a ton of questions on this one. And at this point in time, I'm leaning towards this as likely fake, Davey agrees, from 1999-ish. Okay, that's kind of where we are on that. And again, this is an ongoing journey, ongoing process, ongoing mystery. Now let's get into the J card variations because, again, there's so many different components to this that we didn't know which J card flaps were real or fake. So the first one is the Cam Jones color photo. This is the one that you can see again in Mark's book, Mark's sister's book. That one we have known is real based on that photo. It's right there. You can see it. If you zoom in real close, you can tell it's it. The second one, okay, the purple variation, even in my conversations with Davey like a week ago, he still was not particularly sold on this purple one. We just didn't know. And literally, I think it was yesterday, Mark found a purple version. So we now know, thanks to Mark, that the purple photo is authentic. This is groundbreaking. Again, Travis drumroll, I'll never get it. Somebody hook me up who knows Travis. We now know that this purple J card variation is real. This is huge. Not only that, there was a third one, drastically different, completely different photo, just on that flap. It's so weird to me that somebody was tweaking these intentionally, and I just don't understand why. I mean, just for the heck of it. Mark also found one that has the Carry Key blurry photo. Now, I do want to note that these are all the original Filter stretched text hand-dotted line. We now know that those are all real. Those three J card variations, stretch Filter, hand-dotted line, just that photo on the right flap was tweaked. Those three are authentic, and because the template had not been changed yet, those are, in some sense, the first run. Now, whether those came, a month apart or whatever, we don't know, but we know they were on the same template because the filter is the same, the hand-dotted line is the same, and then what my eye picked up on is there is a hand gap between Buddha and Blink. You can tell that is the same template. Now, at some point in time, they went and they tweaked that template, and we don't know why, and the filter records is different, and now instead of the hand-dotted line, it has a solid horizontal line, and they use the Cam Jones color photo. Now, at this point in time, I believe that is likely authentic as well. However, it's a secondary run because the template that they were hand copying for the cover was updated. Now, the reason I think this is authentic is I actually have on file Scott's girlfriend at the time was helping them put these together, and she kept a couple, and one of the ones that I have photos from her are of that second J-card template. No hand gap, different filter records, solid horizontal line, okay? So in my opinion, at this time, that secondary run and whatever tape it came with is authentic, but it's a later template of the J-card. And I'm wondering how many of you I've just completely fucking lost, and I might as well just be speaking gibberish at this point. And then how many of you are like, oh my gosh, this is fucking crazy. This is like Forensic Files, Blink-182 edition. I appreciate you hanging out with me and bearing with me because this is, I mean, it's crazy. And maybe it's fucking stupid to most of you, but, you know, hopefully there's at least 7 of you who think it's mildly interesting. Now, the 5th J-card variation, in my opinion, this is the one that comes with the white sticker. It comes with blink cutoff at the top. It's clear that whoever copied this, whether it's Filter or a forger or whoever, they took a copy of that solid horizontal line secondary template. They copied that because you can see it's the exact same. You can see the gap that's on there. Talking on the white edge, not the hand gap. There's no hand gap on this one. I think somebody hand copied that, and on some of those that I've examined the pink on closely, you can kind of tell it's a 2nd edition. So again, out of those 5 J-card variations, I think the first 4 are real. We know the first 3 are. 99.9% sure the 4th one is, where the template was changed. The 5th one that comes with the white sticker tape, I think is fake at this point in time. But it's huge that really in the past couple weeks, past month certainly, I've not only identified multiple variations of this, but thanks to Mark's help, we have confirmed 2 different J-card variations and another Buddha tape. The blue text is real. So long story short, that is the Blink-182 Buddha tape mystery and where I am at currently with my research on this. If you found this mildly interesting, please go back and watch the YouTube video because you'll be able to visually see what I'm talking about. And I think it makes a lot more sense when you can look at it. In the meantime, you know, again, if you have any information on these, or if you have one and you have record of where you got it from or the story behind it, I would love to see photos of this. I would love to hear stories on these. If you have any information, this is something that I hope to solve one day. Ultimately, really at this point in time, the only way that Davey and I think that we can truly solve this, and particularly now at this point, the white sticker tape, would be to rip this digitally and then do a spectral analysis. So Davey tells me if you rip a cassette digitally, you get it into the computer and you can look at the wavelengths or something and tell if it's a 1st or 2nd gen. And by that, we'll be able to tell if the white sticker tape is fake or not. Now, what we want to do and what our plan is to get all 4 copies of these in hand. Davey and I are going to meet up somewhere and we're going to crack this once and for all. And I'm hoping to record it. And I told Mark it should be a Netflix special. We'll see. So again, if you have any information on this, hit me up on the pod Instagram at 182newspod. Feels good to get another episode out. I want to thank everybody for reaching out after the last episode. I wasn't in a great place at that time, and so many people reached out and were like, dude, hope everything's all right. I appreciate that. You guys know me. I just do this for fun. It's just a hobby of mine, so always appreciate chatting. As always, thanks for hanging out. I don't know when the next episode's going to come out. I'm just kind of, doing it when I feel inspired to do so. I know I need to knock out some interviews. I've had people lined up for some time, and I need to knock them out. I just have not had any time for the past couple months for sure. And then throughout the pandemic, I think I just played too many video games. So anyways, this was a fun episode. If you have any information, hit me up, and I will talk to you soon. Peace.